Hello. Today we're going to talk about what's the buzz about the STAAR Interim. And this little bee background was so cute. I just couldn't had to make it work somehow. So I'm going to tell you about everything you need to know before administering the interim test. I did create another video about the interim test. My students took it last week. Um, and when I made that video, my kids hadn't quite finished the whole thing yet. And there were some confusing things about how long the test was and those kind of things. So I just wanted to make one more video real quick just to share those things with you and give you some extra information in case you missed the first video. So I am Mrs. Ayala. I'm a third grade teacher in Texas, and I am ELA with Mrs. A on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. So please come follow me. I'm planning on making some more videos about STAAR and the new item types and how I'm teaching those in my classroom and just some other helpful tips and tricks on the technology side of everything. So I would be happy to have you come follow me and hang out with us. All right, so today we're going to talk about a few things. What is the interim test? Who can take it? How long is it? And then just some other helpful tips and information. All right, so the interim test is described by the TEA as a middle of year test that is used to monitor student progress, identify students who need intervention, and predict student performance on STAAR. This is an actual test made by TEA and given in the Cambium browser, which is what the kids will use on STAAR. All of the questions on the interim test are questions that have been field tested on previous STAAR tests, and they are comparable to STAAR questions. So it is really good practice for our kids, and it will also give us an indicator of where they are and how they'll do on the STAAR test. It is recommended by the TEA that this test be taken in February. So if you haven't taken it yet and you would like your kids to take it, I would try to get it in before spring break for sure. This is what they call a multi-level test. So the very first part, the first half of the test is going to be all of your kids will have the same questions. After that, it will take them to a screen that says you've completed the first part of this test, and then they'll go on to the second part. The second part, they level them high, medium, or low. The kids don't know which level they have, but it will give them different questions based on how they did on the first half. From what I noticed walking around looking at my kids taking the test, for most of the kids, it gave them, or probably the high and medium kids, it gave them the same passage, but the questions were slightly different. And then the low kids had a different passage, but it was one that I recognized from a past STAAR test with, of course, different questions. So that's how that works. But then they have the same amount of questions and still the same type. So I'm going to show you the blueprint here. This is the blueprint for the third grade RLA. I'm going to put a link in the description for the other blueprints for the other grade levels, including the math and science and social studies blueprints for the higher grade levels as well. But this is an example of the third grade RLA blueprint. So as you can see, there were 24 total questions on the third grade interim. The first 12 were the ones that were all the same for all the kids, and then the last 12 were the leveled questions. It looked like when I was looking through the different blueprints, 24 is the low end. Of course, third grade's the first year they take STAAR, but it looked like middle school had about 28 questions, and then high school had about 30 to 34. And math was similar. So this isn't like a super, super long test. It's about half of a STAAR test, I guess. The interim does contain some of the new item types, but it will not have any SCR or ECR questions where the kids actually have to type a response. That's because right now TEA doesn't have anybody that would be able to score those. And I guess thankfully they didn't want the teachers to have to score all of those ourselves. So there are none of those on the interim, but they do have some of the other types of questions, like the multi-select and the two-part questions. And that's why you see that there were 24 questions, but there were 26 total points that the kids could earn. All of the writing questions were either editing or revising. And again, none of the ones where they have to type. Um, and those were, so I noticed there were 3 reading passages on the test, and then there was 1 editing and 1 revising, and that was for the 3rd grade test. All right, so who can take interim? Any public school teacher in Texas can access the interim test with a Cambium account. So if you do not have a Cambium account set up yet, you'll need to talk to your campus testing coordinator to help you set that up so that you can administer the interim test. The interim test is optional by the state, and it does not affect student scores on STAAR. All right, so how long is it? So like I said on the blueprint, it's about 24 to 34 questions long, depending on your grade level. You can take the test in parts. So in my district, what we did is we gave the first passage on one day, we gave the second passage a different day, and then they took the last part of it on a 3rd day. So we took this test over 3 days. Personally, I would have rather just done it all in one, especially being in 3rd grade. It took the kids quite a while to log in. So I felt like I lost a lot of teaching time on those 3 days, just trying to get this test done, whereas it probably would have been a lot quicker just to do it all in one day. I would say for my whole class, on average, it took my kids about 2 hours to complete the whole test, so not super bad. And then, so if you are going to take it in parts, they'll just pause. So when they finish the part you want them to take, they can pause the test. When they pause, it will kick them all the way out. And then the next time they log in, it will put them back where they are. The only exception to that is if they pass that first 12 questions or the first half, whatever it is for your grade level, the first half of the test where all the questions are the same, once they get past that and into the second part of the test, they can't go back to the first part. So if you are planning on breaking it up, I think that would probably be a better way to do it, is just have them take the first half where all the questions are the same until they get to the screen that says you've completed this half of the test, and then have them take the second half. But just know that they can't go back to that first half once they've moved on from it. All right, so just a couple other little helpful tips and tricks. They will use the Cambium browser, which is the same browser they'll use for STAAR. If your district has been using Eduphoria or anything other than Cambium to have the kids take tests online, you may want to watch my other video about the Cambium test taking features. They are very different from what my kids were used to in Eduphoria. So it did take a little time of me explaining all of the features and what they do and how to use them, especially for our kiddos who have accommodations. Oral admin, for example, looks very different in Cambium than it did on Eduphoria. So just keep that in mind. You may want to look at that before you have them take this test. They will use a test ticket just like they would for STAAR to log into the browser. For the younger kids, like my 3rd graders, typing in their ID number was a struggle. It is a lot of numbers, and I had probably about half of my class saying, I can't get in, I can't get in. And it was just because they missed a number on their test ticket. So I'm trying to really train them to type that number, go back and double check yourself before you start panicking that you can't get in, because usually that's all it is. I even had a few kids leave out a letter in their name, and that is why they couldn't get in. They will also need from you the test session ID, which you'll find in Cambium when you set up the test. And like I said earlier, pausing logs them completely out, which just means they'll have to put in their name, their test ID, and their session ID again to get back to the test. So I would not have the kids pause the test just to go use the restroom, because they're going to have to log all the way back in when they come back. I would only, and STAAR also recommends, if you look in the testing manual, that they pause the test if they're going to walk away for an extended period of time. So if they get sick, or if you're stopping for the day, or they have to go to another class, or they're being pulled out, then I would have them pause. But just for the restroom or taking a break, I tell my kids to pack me in their computer, like tilt it down so nobody can see their screen, but not close it all the way, just to go to the restroom. Scores we'll find on the Cambium account. I have not, mine are not there yet. And I'm wondering if it's just because I had 2 kids absent when we finished and they still need to finish their test tomorrow. So whenever I figure that out and I'm able to find their scores, I will make another video about how to find scores, how to analyze the data in Cambium, how to sort things, and all of that great stuff. All right, so that is all for today. I was trying to keep it under 10 minutes, almost. And thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss anything. I'm planning on making a lot of more videos about STAAR, new item types, and all of the things this year with all the new stuff with STAAR. So please be sure to subscribe and come follow me on Facebook, ELA with Mrs. A. And I'll see you next time.